Hello and welcome to the EduTalk Diabetes Series hosted by Easy, Biotone, and diabetes health and wellness experts. With the daily challenges of diabetes and interest in health and wellness strategies, the EduTalk Diabetes Series supports building your wellness community by connecting you with diabetes health experts who share their knowledge and expertise on topics of concern to provide you the tools and resources to support and manage a healthy lifestyle. Today's expert is Linda Lockett Brown, the president of Cinet Registered Dietitians and Wellness. Her eDSMEs Diabetes Education Program is nationally accredited and can be completed online, in person, or by phone. Linda's approach empowers people with diabetes to master 7 key behaviors. She's been featured on TV, radio, podcasts, sharing nutritional information for health and well-being. Additionally, she's presented 2 EduTalk Diabetes series for us, found in the EduTalk archive libraries on easy.com or biotone.com. Let's listen and learn as Linda discusses good fat, bad fat, questioning, is fat good or bad? Well, the answer is, it all depends. The Keto, Paleo, and Carnivore folks say eat as much as you want. The American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, plus the Dietary Guidelines for Americans say otherwise. Who do you believe? The answers might surprise you. And with that, Linda, welcome. And everyone, please feel free to chat questions during Linda's presentation, which will be answered at the end. And just be sure to have sound and video off. Again, Linda, welcome. I'm going to exit the screen and turn it over to you because some of us want French fries.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that warm introduction. And this topic is one of the most confusing. It is one of the most confusing, but hopefully by the end of the evening, I will have answered your questions and you won't be confused anymore. So good fat, bad fat. But before we get to that, I'd first like to thank the EduTalk folks for letting me be on. But I have a really important announcement, and that is that we are now recognized by the Centers for Disease Control to present the diabetes prevention program. So it's set up the same way as the diabetes education program. You can do it online. You can come to my office if you live in this area. And what I really like about the program is you get an actual health coach that is committed to you. So if you know people that have been diagnosed with prediabetes, let them know that we're available. And on the screen is the 800 number to just let us know that you're interested, and we will get in contact with you and get you all set up. So I have to do this legal stuff at the beginning. And here's the legal stuff. Branded products are shown for educational purposes only. Their use does not constitute endorsement of the product. And the graphics are licensed from Envato unless they say otherwise. So good, bad. So we're going to talk about fat and health. And so I put a heart here because heart disease is the #1 cause of death for men and women in the United States of America. And so when you have been diagnosed with actually prediabetes and then diabetes, your risk of heart disease goes up even higher. And so the kind of fat that you eat does make a difference. So when you talk about fat and health, here's the thing I want you to remember. All fat has the same number of calories, and that's 9 calories per gram. So carbohydrates have 4, protein has 4. They both have 4 calories. Fat has 9 calories. So if you're in the position where you need to lose a little bit of weight, then dropping fat calories is going to be the most efficient way to make that happen. But you don't have to go down to 0 because fat is actually a necessary nutrient. So it's still all about balance. And so I'm going to help you with balance. And we're going to do 2 things tonight. We're going to talk about the health aspect, but then we're going to actually talk about the cooking aspect. Like, what do you actually cook with? So let's start out with just some basic things. So the nature of fats and oils. And so here's the distinction I'm making. An oil is liquid at room temperature, and a solid fat is just that, solid at room temperature. So the calories are the same. So in most cases, oils are liquid at room temperature, in most cases. Having said that, there are some notable exceptions, and these exceptions are important because these are the fats that you're going to find in processed foods. So coconut oil, palm kernel oil, those are liquid at room temperature, but they are saturated. So most oils that are liquid at room temperature are unsaturated. So these are the exceptions: coconut, palm oil, palm kernel oil. And if you're one of those folks that has heard of that beverage that people are drinking in the morning, they're taking a quarter of a cup of coconut oil and mixing it with their coffee, and they call it bulletproof. Not something that I would ever recommend. So that's one issue. So we have unsaturated oils that are liquid at room temperature. Then we have these unusual oils that are liquid at room temperature, but they're saturated. And then we have trans fats, and trans fats are what are formed when oils get processed. So when you see a label that says trans fat free, it is not true. It is not true because there's a loophole in the law that says if you have less than a half a gram per serving, you can call it 0. Well, if you ate more than 1 serving of something, then you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grams of trans fats, and those will raise your cholesterol. So unsaturated fats tend to lower cholesterol in the blood. Saturated fats and trans fats raise cholesterol in the blood. So when you hear those terms, saturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, what does that mean? So here's what it means. We're talking about the chemical nature of fats. So if I were to blow up a molecule of fat, what you would see is a bunch of carbons all lined up, connected to each other. Every carbon has the ability to hold 4 hydrogens. So if a carbon is full and has all 4 hydrogens, we call that saturated because it's saturated with hydrogens. So the significance of that is if you eat foods with saturated fats, the saturated fat tells your liver to make more cholesterol and kick it out into your bloodstream. So pretty much everybody knows there's a relationship between cholesterol levels in the bloodstream and your risk of heart disease. So when you think about saturated fats and oils in cooking, What are we looking at? We are looking at medium heat fats, meaning you can't fry with them. We're looking at butter, coconut oil, lard. Actually, you can fry with lard. And then we have vegetable shortening. We're going to talk more about that vegetable shortening later. The things that are high heat are ghee, which is clarified butter. You know, if you melt butter, there's a liquid part that comes up to the top. That's the ghee. And then we have palm oil and palm kernel oil. So if you go out to certain tropical areas, there is a fruit that grows on a plant, and it's called palm fruit. So if you get the fruit part, get oil from the fruity part, it is 50% saturated. If you get oil from the seed, the actual palm kernel in the middle, it is 80% fat saturated. So when you read a food label, if you see palm oil or palm kernel oil, that is not a product that you want to eat because you are getting a saturated fat. So you might be wondering, why do food manufacturers put saturated fat in products? The reason why they do that is, remember that carbon that has the 4 hydrogens, when you add 4 hydrogens to a carbon, you decrease the ability of rancidity to occur. So the reason why manufacturers use these saturated fats is because the product can stay on the shelf longer. It extends the shelf life. It has absolutely nothing to do with nutrition. It has to do with corporate profits. So then you have monounsaturated fats. And so the most famous monounsaturated fat is olive oil. So with the monounsaturated fat, what you've done is you have taken 1 hydrogen off. And so by taking that 1 hydrogen off, it does just the opposite of a saturated fat. A monounsaturated fat, meaning 1 hydrogen is gone, it decreases cholesterol levels in the bloodstream. So what happens if you take more than 1 hydrogen off? So if you take 2 hydrogens off or 3 hydrogens off, you now have a polyunsaturated fat. So if you take 2 or more hydrogens off, then the fat is now polyunsaturated. So we learned about this, it's probably, goodness, late 60s, early 70s. We figured out that if people ate corn oil based products, then cholesterol levels went down. So this decreases cholesterol in the bloodstream. Here's the downside. Once you take that hydrogen off, that leaves a place where other things can attach themselves to the fat. And so depending on what it is, if you eat a lot of polyunsaturated fats, it can increase your risk of cancer and it can increase inflammation. So food manufacturers got really creative. So they knew that everybody was hunting for corn oil, canola oil, soybean oil, because they were polyunsaturated and tended to lower cholesterol levels. So food manufacturers says, well, let's see what we can do with this. So what they did is people associated corn oil with healthy. They associated soybean oil with healthy. They associated canola oil with healthy. So what they did is they took those oils and they chemically added hydrogens back to on the molecule. So when you do that, that process makes trans fats. So you've actually done 2 things. You have hydrogenated. So if you look at a label and you see the word hydrogenated, what that means is saturated. We took a polyunsaturated fat, we added hydrogens to it, and we made it saturated. So it's kind of a double whammy. Cholesterol levels will go up because the fat is saturated. Cholesterol levels will go up because your body does not know what to do with trans fats. It's a foreign molecule. The shape is wrong. Your enzymes don't know what to do. They do have the ability to store that fat, but you don't have enzymes that can break it down. So if you have a lot of trans fats stored in your body, they will be with you for life because you don't have a way to break them down. So here's the question, and I'm just going to be honest. This is the question that most of my clients ask me. They want to know, when they say, what fat can I use for cooking? What they really want to know is, what fat can I fry my food in? Because I'm in the South. What fat can I fry my food in and get away with it? That's the real question. So I will answer that. Actually, by the end, I will answer that question. So the question at hand right now is, does it matter what fat you use for cooking? And the answer is absolutely it does. From a calorie standpoint, makes no difference. From a what it does to your heart, what it does to your cancer risk, what it does to your inflammation risk, it absolutely does matter. And one of the commercials that makes me totally crazy is you'll see people cooking at home, and they'll have this container or a bowl with vegetables in it, and they take the vegetables and they drown them in olive oil. Well, from a heart perspective, that is not a problem. From a weight perspective, it is a problem because all fat has the same number of calories. So the answer to this question is absolutely yes. It does matter which one you use for cooking. Now, I'm just going to tell you up front, this is something you never want to buy. And you might be tempted because it's going to be the cheapest oil in the store. And that is vegetable oil, nondescript. That's what they call it. It says vegetable oil. The reason why I'm saying don't buy it, because it will be the cheapest, but don't buy it, because you have no way to know what you're getting. So what's in that vegetable oil bottle is whatever was cheapest on the day that bottle was processed. So I don't recommend that you ever just buy nondescript vegetable oil where it doesn't say what kind of oil it is. Now, the American Heart Association, I just found this interesting. They have their own certification criteria, and they use this certification for lots of different foods. But I was really surprised to see that they have a criteria for oils. So I'm going to show you the criteria that they use. It's pretty extensive, but there are some oils that actually meet the American Heart Association certification criteria. So this shows you what, and this is not even all of the things that they look at. This is just some of them. But in order to get this American Heart Association certification, saturated fat has to be 4 grams or less per serving. So that's because the reality is, whether it's olive oil, corn oil, soybean oil, it doesn't matter. Even though those are monounsaturated or polyunsaturated, there is some saturated fat in it. It's just a smaller amount. So for olive oil, corn oil, it's 4 grams or less of saturated. For canola oil, it's 1 gram or less. And for some of the other olive oils and corn oils, it's 2 grams or less. Now, this is really important. to get the American Heart Association certification, products containing partially hydrogenated oils are not eligible for certification. That is significant. So they're acknowledging the 0.5. So if you looked on the label and it says partially hydrogenated anything, it would not meet the qualifications to get this certification. So cholesterol, 20 milligrams or less. Of course, you wouldn't expect sodium to be in an oil, but that does apply to some of the other products. And then I really like this last criteria. It must be pure olive oil, canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil. Now you can have blends of those, but they have to be pure. So now we're going to talk about cooking with fats and oils. And so when you talk about cooking, you're using oil in a lot of different types of recipes, all the way from marinating something to sauteing to drizzling to baking, stir frying, frying, grilling, and sauces. And so a lot of my clients have air fryers. And if you have an air fryer, there's something you have already figured out. If you have an air fryer, you have to either put oil on the fryer itself or put oil on the meat itself or the vegetable, whatever you're putting in the air fryer. You have to put some oil. If you don't, your food will be stuck to the air fryer. So if you made that mistake, you already know. So this is a chart that actually came from the folks that make olive oil, Pompeo, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. But what I want you to see, if you look down on the bottom, it's divided by the cooking temperature. So these are the cooking temperatures that you can go up to when you use these products. So coconut oil cooking spray, pretty low temperature, around 350. Go up a little more to 380. You have your extra virgin olive oil. You have your smooth extra virgin olive oil. You organic. You have your gourmet selection, your robust, your organic robust. So that's the categories, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Then up at 410, you have your mild olive oil and your rich taste. Then up at the 440 range, you have your light taste. And then 470 to 510, which would be the temperature you would need if you were going to fry something. You got your avocado, grapeseed oil, and grapeseed cooking spray. So in my air fryer, I actually use grapeseed oil, and I just put a little bit on a paper towel and then rub it across the air fryer griddle part. Or if I have grapeseed oil in a spray, I'll actually spray it on. So oils are divided by smoke points, and that is the temperature at which the oil starts smoking. So I have clients that come to me and say, well, you said that olive oil was healthy, so I tried to fry my fish in olive oil and my house caught on fire. That's happened more than once. So there is olive oil that you can use at high heat, and I'm going to show you how you find those. But in general, oils with high smoke points, you're going to use those for braising and frying. So here's some high heat oils that are monounsaturated. So there's an advantage to that because the monounsaturated decrease cholesterol in your bloodstream. So we have almond, avocado, canola, olive oil, just generic olive oil, peanut oil, rice bran oil, and virgin olive oil. Now, I have an asterisk by canola. The reason why I put an asterisk by canola is because 93% of all canola oil is genetically modified. So if it doesn't say that it's organic, then it is probably genetically modified. And right now, we actually don't know what that is going to do to you. We don't know. I am recommending that if you use an oil for the purpose of frying or braising, I am recommending that you do not reuse the oil, because when you use the oil at high heat, you are making free radicals, and free radicals are just these little molecules that have negative charges, and they can run through your body, go into your cells, damage your DNA, and increase your risk of cancer. So I'm recommending that if you use one of these oils, that when you're done, you just throw it away. Don't reuse it. There are some polyunsaturated high heat oils. So corn oil is one of those. We got cottonseed, grapeseed, safflower, sesame, soybean, sunflower, and then that amorphous vegetable oil. I have asterisks by corn oil and soybean oil because over 90% of those in the United States are genetically modified. So just want to alert you to that. And so this is a Pompeian 100% cottonseed oil. And if you notice down on the bottom in the little purple section, it says this is for high heat cooking. And they're defining that as deep frying or baking. So now we go from the high heat to the medium/medium high heat, because in science, sometimes you can't make clear distinctions. So this is medium high heat. So these applications would be sauteing or making a sauce. Because with most sauces, you have to get it really hot, bring it to a rolling boil, and then you have to stand there and keep stirring it or whisking it so that it doesn't clump up. So the oils that you would use for that application would be butter, ghee, coconut oil, hopefully not lard, but you could, extra virgin olive oil, virgin olive oil. And then let's talk about this solid vegetable shortening. I don't want to name brand names because I don't want to get sued, but you know what it is. It's a round container, and you take the lid off, and inside there's this beautiful white solid fat. So that's what I'm talking about. It is hydrogenated. That's how they make, because it'll say solid vegetable shortening. Yeah, but it's hydrogenated. So don't do it. I do not recommend that you use that in anything. Now, there's some oils that, because they're so fragile, you don't want to cook with them at all. You don't want to cook with these. So what would you do with these? You can't cook with them. So what you could do with these is make your own salad dressing. So that would be flaxseed, hazelnut, hemp seed, macadamia, and walnut. So you're going to use those in applications where the thing that you are making does not require any heat at all. Now, one of the things that I just truly love to do, and that is to use oil sprays. And the reason why I like doing that is because it's a way to save calories. So rather than standing there like they do on the TV commercials with this bottle and you're pouring all this oil on something, these, you have avocado, coconut, grapeseed, extra virgin olive oil. These are in pump sprays. And the thing you want to look for is, you notice where I have the red arrow, it says no propellant. So that means that they're not using some chemical to help the oil spray. That's not something you want to eat. So you want to get these pump sprays that say no propellants. So what you do with this is, if you were going to say saute something, you'd spray your pan with it. You could spray your air fryer with it. You could even spray the food with it if you wanted to put on the air fryer. What I really like about using these pump sprays is you can get the benefit of the oil without using a lot of it, because you're literally spraying it on in a fine mist. So you're going to save some calories. So now I want to just talk about olive oil. I will say putting this lesson together was fascinating to me. I did not know that there were so many different types of olive oil. So one of the ways you can divide up olive oil is by the flavor, or by the smoke point, or both. Now, if you've never used olive oil a lot, or you've just been around it a little bit, you probably have an opinion about the way it smells. So one of the things that we're going to recommend is, if you decide to start using olive oil more in your cooking, I'm going to show you two ways to do it. The experimental way is, every time you buy an oil, buy a different kind of olive oil, smell it and taste it, and then pick the one you like. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to buy some products that are basically designed for beginners, and I'll show you some of those. So this is just Pompeian. This is their regime for how they divide up their olive oils, and there are other companies and they do it in different ways. I just want you to be aware of what you're looking for. So there's a light taste, there's a mild taste, and there's a rich taste. So if you have tasted or smelled some olive oil and you weren't real fond of it, you were probably doing the rich taste. The light taste and the mild taste will impart less flavor to your food. And if you're using it for an application like baking, you won't taste it at all. So another way to look at the flavors of olive oil, there's smooth, extra virgin, there's smooth that's organic, extra virgin. And so the applications for those would be sauteing or stir frying. So let's say you were going to saute some peppers and onions. Well, instead of putting butter or the nondescript vegetable oil, you could use extra virgin olive oil, and you really don't taste the flavor of the olive oil. Now, a lot of people these days are following the Mediterranean diet. And so one of the dishes that you see a lot in Mediterranean way of cooking is called bruschetta. And so this is a type of bruschetta. One type of bruschetta is just olive oil with spices. This bruschetta, you're basically making, it's almost like a salsa type thing with tomatoes and spices. And what you do is you spread the olive oil on the bread, and then you toast it, and then you put the tomatoes with the spices, and you would serve this as an appetizer. So the olive oil you'd use for that would be a bold one. And this one is actually from Spain. And so you would use that for dipping and drizzling. So for those olive oil aficionados where you really like the smell and the taste of olive oil, you would want to use a robust flavor. And so you use that in salads and you use it in marinades. When I do marinades, I actually don't add oil, but that's just a personal preference. But you could, and you just need to be cognizant of how much you add so that you're not adding excessive calories. And then if you really want a mild, really, really mild flavor, there is a fresh and fruity olive oil, and you could use that for roasting and sauteing. So remember I told you I was going to show you a place to begin, and I'm sure most olive oil companies have a similar kind of product, but I just was drawn to the Pompeian because they made this product especially for people that are just starting out with using olive oil. And the other reason why I kind of like this product is because extra virgin olive oil is not cheap. It's kind of pricey. The grapeseed oil is pricey. All of your high quality oils are going to be pricey. But if you're using the smallest amount possible, it'll last for a while. So the Pompeian folks have an olive oil that you use to saute. They have one that you can fry with it. They have one you can drizzle with it, and they have one that you can use for baking. Now, if you notice, not all of them have the American Heart Association seal. The ones that have the American Heart Association seals are the ones that are used in the lower temperature applications. So I found that interesting. Now, one of the most surprising things that I learned when I put this lesson together was that you can bake with olive oil and you can use olive oil as a replacement for butter. That is pretty awesome because the calories are going to be the same, but the benefit that you're going to get is olive oil is monounsaturated. So it's going to help decrease your cholesterol levels in your bloodstream. Having said that, in diabetes, you know, it's all about portion control. So even if you make this cornbread out of olive oil, you don't increase the portion size. The portion size is still the same. What is different is what that serving of baked item is going to do in your bloodstream. So I found a really nice website that has a lot of recipes. I mean, all kinds of recipes. And it's called About to Live, aboutoliveoil.org. That's the name of the website, aboutoliveoil.org. So on the Pompeian website and on the About Olive Oil website, they have conversion tables, and just pick the one that makes the most sense to you. But they have conversion tables because if you have a recipe that calls for butter and you're going to use olive oil, you use less olive oil than you would butter. So there's a calorie advantage to that. So just for an example, if the recipe calls for a teaspoon of butter and you're going to substitute olive oil, you only need to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of olive oil. So if the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of butter, then you're only going to use 2 1/4 teaspoons of olive oil. So the advantage to that is you're going to be saving some significant calories for all the recipes that you can use where you are substituting olive oil for butter. You're going to save some calories. So here's a chart, and I'm making the slides available so you'll have this chart in your handout. So here's the question. Can you fry foods in olive oil? I promised you I was going to answer that question, and here's the answer. Apparently you can. There is a USDA recommendation for using olive oil for deep frying. And what they have found in research in Spain and some other European countries, one of the protective compounds that's in olive oil, it's called a polyphenol. And that's actually what helps decrease your risk of heart disease. And these compounds can be fragile depending on what food they're in. Apparently, certain types of olive oil, the ones that are designated for high heat, retain the polyphenols. So what that means is if you fry, say make some French fries or fry some whatever in the olive oil, those protective compounds are still there. Now, does that mean you want to deep fry? Should you fry foods in extra virgin olive oil? Well, unfortunately, the answer is still no. So if you fried using extra virgin olive oil, yes, your heart would be protected in one sense, but then you're still going to gain weight, which is going to affect your heart negatively. It's going to affect your diabetes control negatively. And here's why. So if you take the lowly chicken thigh, and this is with the skin on, if you take the skin off, you lose 103 calories. So this is chicken thigh with the skin on. If you baked it, it would be 278 calories. If you fried it, it's 373 calories. So almost 100 calories more. If you made your own French fries, if you just took the potatoes and sliced them and put them in the oven, it would be 120 calories. If you deep fry them, it's 220 calories. If you make a pork chop, take the lowly pork chop, not a lot you can do to pork chop. If you eat and this is a 3-ounce pork chop, just bake it, 320 calories. If you fry it, it is 400 calories. So if you ate 10 medium shrimp, 10 medium shrimp, it would be a whopping 50 calories. If you take those same 10 shrimp and deep fry them in olive oil or in any other kind of oil that you could fry with, you have now increased the calories to 400. 400. There is a misconception out there that with diabetes, all you got to do is worry about the carbs, meaning sugars and starches. That is true. But eating excessive fat does two things. Your blood sugar will go up if you eat excessive fat. It just takes 12 hours. The other concern about eating too much fat is if your triglycerides go up, you are more insulin resistant. So I want you to think about kind of a way to look at this in your mind is if I am more insulin resistant, I am more diabetic. So what I'm saying is, yes, There are certain types of olive oil that you can use to fry, but you don't want to. You don't want to. So if you did this, say, once a year, there is one person on the planet that gets something fried by his wife once a year, then go for it. But where I live and the clients that I have, fried food is like such a part of life that it's problematic. It's problematic. Now, I was at a conference recently and I was listening to one of the most well-respected nutrition researchers in the United States, and it may even be the world, but I know for sure in the United States because I've been following him for over 40 years. And he was talking about longevity. And if you follow the news, you know about a month ago, there was this uproar about the fact that younger people are not living as long as older people. So in the United States, the lifespan is going down. And there were all of these people talking about, well, we're not sure why that is. I know why that is. There is no question in my mind about why that is. If you eat most of your meals in a restaurant, you are decreasing your lifespan. And you may say, well, why is that? When I go to the restaurant, I order grilled chicken and I get a salad. Well, let's talk about what happens to that grilled chicken. And I can say this because I do restaurant inspections and I've done restaurant inspections for over 30 years. So I know what goes on in the kitchen. There is an oil that is used that is called, well, I'm not going to say what it's called, but there's an oil that's used in a commercial kitchen that looks like butter, but it's liquid. It looks like butter, and it is used for everything. It's used on the grill. It's used on the griddle. And if you ordered a grilled chicken breast, they're going to take a paintbrush. That's what it looks like. It's called a pastry brush, but it looks like a paintbrush. They're going to dunk it in this oil and they're going to paint your chicken with it all the way around, both sides. And then they're going to put it on the grill. Why do they do that? Because their grill or griddle, either one, is at 500 or 550 degrees. The reason why it is at 500 or 550 degrees is because they want to turn, it's a term, it's called turn the table. They want you in and out of the restaurant as quickly as possible so that they can bring another set of people in. So if you eat in restaurants on a regular basis, you are increasing your risk of heart disease and cancer because of the oils that are used in the cooking process. These oils are not available to you as a consumer. You can't go in a store and even buy these oils. They are specifically for restaurants. So I have a label from one of those containers, and it says ingredients: soybean oil, cottonseed oil, third ingredient, palm oil. And then it says contains less than 2% of salt, emulsifiers. And we now know that emulsifiers are detrimental to the good bacteria in your colon. There's natural and artificial flavors. We have not a clue as to what those flavors are. And then there's this chemical, TBHQ, that is added so that that oil can sit on the shelf for years if need be. And then they add a little beta carotene, which is vitamin A, so that the oil looks like butter. So if you eat in a restaurant occasionally, your body can handle occasional insults. If you eat in a restaurant several times a week, your body does not have a way to come back from those insults. So that's the lesson about good fat, bad fat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Linda. Again, a wonderful talk, and we should all be running to our kitchen and checking our labels there. I earlier on in your presentation, one of the slides had avocado oil, I saw sunflower seed oil, so seed oils.
Yes.
And how do they rank? I know we saw grape in the sprays, grapeseed and avocado, but what about something like sunflower seed oil to cook with? How does that rank?
Those are basically monounsaturated. So the only seed oil that I wouldn't recommend would actually be the palm kernel oil. I wouldn't recommend that one. And I don't actually recommend coconut oil. Now, I know that goes against a lot of things that a lot of people say, but coconut is saturated. So if it's sunflower, safflower, you're good to go with those. You're
Okay.
good to go.
All right. Folks, we still have opportunity for more questions for Linda to answer. What I'd like to just quickly go back to is Linda did present at the very beginning of the EduTalk Diabetes series, More Than Carbs. And again, this is in the EduTalk archive library on easy.com or biotone.com under the EduTalk tab. And she really brought up the importance of reading labels. And what stuck with me from that was the sugars, and underneath it a little line that said added sugars. So again, tonight, to bring our awareness to reading labels and understanding what it means, it's so important. And as it ties into one's health, heart health, cancer risks, it's really important to be aware of these. I saw a chat. Let's see.
Yeah, I
I'm
saw a
curious about.
question. Go ahead.
I'm curious about the fat differences between meat animals that are raised on a pasture versus conventional means.
There is a massive difference, and you're going to pay more for the pasture raised. We actually hadn't had hamburgers in our house for goodness 10, 15 years, and then Aldi's came to town and they had grass-fed, free-range ground beef, and it was 94% lean. And I actually took it home and made a hamburger, and you would have thought my husband died and went to heaven. But it makes a difference, because if the animal is pasture raised, meaning they're out in the grass eating grass like they're supposed to, and they're not being given extra like hormones to fatten them up faster, that meat is actually healthier because the saturated fat content is much lower. So that means that if you eat the right portion size, your risk of heart disease from saturated fat is marginal because of the way the animal was raised. So yes, it's going to cost you more money, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it if you can fit it in your budget.
Well, very good. Tomorrow, everyone, you'll receive a follow-up email with a copy of the recording link, Linda's contact information, and a copy of her PowerPoint presentation as well. I'll include the links to her previous 2 EduTalks, and I'd like to mention Linda will be presenting another EduTalk Diabetes series later in the year. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't remember if it's August, September, but keep an eye on your inbox for upcoming invitations to EduTalks, and especially Linda's. Excellent information, and really, we take just buying food and shopping for food for granted. And sometimes we shop in a great market. We're not reading labels. We just think, oh, I'm in this great market, so everything they have should be good. But it's, again, taking time to know what we're putting in our bodies, and then understanding, which was very helpful tonight, of what that does once our body starts to process and break it down. So any last questions? Well, if not, I'd like you to join us in May. We have on May 14th, Dr. Jonathan Spags will present on how to successfully reverse type 2 diabetes without fancy diets, starving yourself, or exhausting exercises. And for those of you who are massage therapists, April 16th, we have Whitney Lowe presenting on applied biomechanics. And I don't know, I didn't write down the rest of his topic. So again, forgive me, please check your email for invitation. Both of the upcoming EduTalks will be in tomorrow's follow-up email. And again, I appreciate you joining us tonight for EduTalks. Linda, you always present such great topics and really open our eyes to how we can improve our health, whether we're diabetic or not. And I appreciate that so much. Thank you, everyone. Linda, is there anything in closing?
Well, there were a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, I see a lot of thank yous. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, informative information.
Well, one question was real interesting. It says, what if it's a brand name and it
I don't
says
see that.
vegetable oil? You
No, I
still
don't
don't
see that.
know.
I don't see that chat.
I'm
Oh,
not
maybe she
exactly,
sent it to you directly, or they sent it to you directly.
maybe so.
And so,
Yeah,
what is this one?
it says, what if the vegetable oil has a brand name? And it just says vegetable oil. You still don't know what's in it. You don't know. And there's another question about, is cold pressed extra virgin olive oil different from the others? And it actually is. It means that there was absolutely zero heat used in getting that oil out of the olive. And the other question was, do olive oils have a shelf life? Everything has a shelf life, and it'll be right on the bottle. It'll be right on the bottle.
Well, very good. Thank you for those questions.
I think that was the last one. Okay.
All righty. Well, thank you very much. And again, Linda's contact information will be in the follow-up email tomorrow with the handout, and links to her previous EduTalks, which can be found on biotone.com or easy.com under the EduTalk tab. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you joining us. Be safe and be well. Thank you.
Good
Take
night.
care.